Man, the Japanese were cooking in 1980. Tech breakthroughs, blockbuster movies, idols rising and retiring, cars dominating the global market. If you haven't watched my video on Japan in 1980 yet, I highly recommend it. It's pretty good. But as 1980 came to a close, the land of the rising sun wasn't done yet. Oh no, far from it. 1981 didn't feel like your classic tired sequel. It was a banger in its own right, a year that brought more groundbreaking inventions, the farewell of a beloved pop duo, the rise of a sumo legend known as the Wolf, the largest Yakuza funeral ever, and yes, the debut of Japan's favorite popsicle. My name is Aniki, this is Timeline Japan, and the year is 1981. Before we get going, leave a like, subscribe to the channel to have future Timeline Japan videos show up in your feed, and maybe check out the Patreon and help a guy out for as little as $1 per month. Now with that out of the way, ikimashou. Let's do this. Japan kicked off 1981 by celebrating a century of higher education when on January 17th, Tokyo's Meiji University marked its 100th anniversary. Founded in 1881 as a small law school named after the emperor, it became a full university in 1920 and then grew into an academic powerhouse. By the early 1980s, it had become the most applied to university in Japan. Its alumni roster, packed. Former Prime Minister Miki Takeo, a long list of politicians, athletes, entertainers, and of course, the GOAT himself, Kitano Takeshi. Actually, he dropped out at age 19. But we don't really talk about that part. Then in February, Sony came in with its first of many tech bangers of the 1980s. On the first of the month, they dropped the WM2. Their second generation Walkman. The first Walkman, a somewhat low-effort attempt by Sony to create a portable cassette player, had been somewhat of a surprise hit. But the sequel? Smaller, lighter, cooler, with better design and battery life. This was the Walkman that truly started to turn portable music into a lifestyle. And starting in 1981, these things started to appear absolutely everywhere. From packed Tokyo trains to quiet park benches in the hands of teenagers, overworked salarymen and office workers, everyone. Oh, and Matsuda Seiko advertised future Walkman models throughout the 1980s, so you basically had to buy one whether you wanted to or not. I mean, seriously, God bless this woman.
It's a Sony.
Oh, and speaking of God, February also brought a visit from the man closest to him, Pope John Paul II. On the 23rd, he landed in Tokyo before heading off to both Hiroshima and Nagasaki to honor the victims of 1945 and urge a world without nuclear weapons. As the first pope ever to visit Japan, a country that despite having a history of an often troubled one with the Catholic faith and one that remains predominantly Shinto and Buddhist, John Paul II praised Japan's newfound religious openness, showing that besides being a mission for peace and a huge media spectacle, his visit was also an important moment in presenting Japan as a modern, peaceful nation on an international stage. Jump to March 6th, and Japan gets one of its best-selling books of all time, Madogiwa no Totto-chan, or Totto-chan, the Little Girl at the Window, by Kuroyanagi Tetsuko. Originally released as a series of articles in Kodansha's Young Woman magazine, Madogiwa no Totto-chan is a memoir that recounts the author's unconventional education at a Tokyo elementary school called Tomoe Gakuen during World War II. It is a story that celebrates curiosity, individuality, and the joy of learning, while at the same time challenging the strict, rigid nature of Japan's school system as a whole. It was a book that struck a national nerve, selling over 5 million copies in just 2 years, and eventually 25 million worldwide after being translated into more than a dozen different languages. And if Kurosanagi's intention was to leave a lasting impact with her book, then oh boy did she nail it. By 1983, Totto-chan had been officially recognized as a textbook for third-year elementary school students across Japan. One of the most important pieces of Japanese literature of the 20th century, a cultural phenomenon, and a Guinness World Record holder. The best-selling autobiography by a single author ever. Then, only 2 days later on March 8th, Japan was jolted by an accident at a nuclear power plant in Tsuruga, Fukui Prefecture. There, a nuclear waste tank overflowed after a valve was left open, exposing more than 50 workers attempting to clean up the mess to radiation. Their efforts were fruitless. In the end, around 16 tons of contaminated water made their way into nearby Wakasa Bay. It was no Chernobyl or Fukushima, but it was the worst nuclear spill in Japan's history up until that point. And to make things worse, there was even an attempt to cover up the incident. The company responsible for the plant waited a full 40 days to report it, sparking national outrage and serious doubts about the safety and the future of Japan's nuclear energy program. In the end though, the Tsuruga plant only shut down for 6 months, and within a year, Tsuruga Unit 2 was up and running. Happy anniversary!
コマーシャルタイムです。
ここがやったのビッグカメラ大きく変わったビッグカメラでかい安い皆様のお越しを心よりお待ち申し上げております
Back to music, March 21st saw the release of Eiichi Otaki's A Long Vacation. With its tight 10-song tracklist, no skips, and an iconic album cover designed by the legendary Nagai Hiroshi, this thing is pure bubble-era smoothness. Japanese music fans agreed. A Long Vacation never hit number 1, but became the 8th best-selling Japanese album of the entire 1980s, with critics and fans alike still hailing it as one of the greatest albums to ever come out of the land of the rising sun. Certified banger. And sticking with the theme of music, 10 days later on March 31st, it was the end of an era. Pink Lady's quote-unquote farewell concert. Mie and Kei, childhood friends who together formed Japan's most beloved pop duo, had dominated the late 1970s with 9 #1 singles, a Billboard Top 40 hit in the US, one of only 2 Japanese singles to ever achieve that, their own variety show in the US.
It's very difficult to learn to speak English properly.
Keep trying. You'll get better.
And even the distinction of being the first Japanese act to perform in Seoul, South Korea. After 5 whirlwind years, they were supposed to bow out at Korakuen Stadium. Except, of course, they didn't. Pink Lady would reunite not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 times. But back in March of 1981, when no one knew that these girls were basically allergic to calling it quits, their farewell felt final and fans were heartbroken. Going into the month of May, Japan witnessed history in one of its oldest and most revered board games, Go. On May 7th, 1981, South Korean-born player Cho Chi-kun did something that no one had ever achieved before, winning the prestigious Honinbo League with a flawless record of 7 wins and 0 losses. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Perfection. The win crowned Cho as Honinbo champion, adding to the Meiji title that he already held, which made him a dual title holder at just 25 years old. And Cho didn't stop there either. By 1982, he added the Chudan title to his name, stacking them up like a true prodigy and firmly cementing his legacy as one of the greatest Go players to ever do it. His dominance, starting in 1981, wasn't just about victories on the board though. It symbolized a generational shift in the sport, and with Go often dominated by Japanese masters, Cho's brilliance marked the rise of international players at the very top level as well. In other words, Cho Chi-kun didn't just win, he redefined what greatness looked like in the world of Go. Fast forward to July, and another game of tradition and strategy was being played out, though this one was far more physical and far more sweaty. The 1981 July Grand Sumo Tournament in Nagoya ended with 26-year-old Chiyo no Fuji claiming victory. finishing with an outstanding record of 14 wins and only 1 loss. His final bout against the mighty Kitanoumi wasn't just a win. It was the match that sealed his own promotion to Yokozuna, the highest rank in sumo. Tsuruga became the 58th wrestler to achieve this honor, and with his leaner, more muscular build, just 120 kilograms compared to the usual giants of the dohyo, he stood out immediately. The same went for his ferocious style, his good looks, and muscular physique, which quickly turned him into somewhat of a sex symbol in Japan. A celebrity athlete admired well beyond the ring. And if that wasn't enough blessings bestowed upon one man, the people also dubbed him the Wolf. It's almost unfair how cool this dude was, really. His legendary sumo career matched his celebrity status too. Over 1,000 total wins, an insane 53 consecutive victories in 1988, and nearly a full decade holding the title of Yokozuna before retiring in 1991.
体力の限界記録もなくなり引退することになりました以上です
Tsuruga wasn't just a champion. He was the face of sumo throughout the 1980s and one of the true goats of the sport who brought sumo into the mainstream spotlight like never before. But hey, not all of Japan's cultural icons of 1981 wore mawashi or moved ghost-stones across the board. Some of them came frozen on a stick. That summer, Saitama-based company Akagi Nugio released what would become the country's most beloved popsicle and a cultural staple during those sweltering hot Japanese summers. Gari-gari-kun. Exact release date? Unknown. And believe me, I did my research on this one. Regardless, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Launched during the summer heat, priced at just 50 yen, and available in 3 simple flavors: soda, cola, and grapefruit. What made it unique was its texture. Crunchy shaved ice packed inside a sweet popsicle shell, creating a perfect balance of refreshing and filling. And then there was its unforgettable mascot, the wide-mouthed, gap-toothed Gari-gari-kun himself, whose name comes from Gari-gari, the sound of crunching ice. Just look at this dude, he wants their popsicle so bad. Kids loved it, parents tolerated it, and soon convenience stores across Japan couldn't keep them stocked. Over 40 years later, Gari-gari-kun remains the country's best-selling popsicle, a nostalgic summer staple, and an unlikely pop culture icon. Not bad for a shaved ice treat that started out as a cheap way to cool down on a hot summer day in 1981. On July 4th, 1981, Japan made global headlines with a story that sounded like it was pulled straight out of science fiction. That day, 37-year-old maintenance worker Urada Kenji was repairing a malfunctioning robotic arm at a Kawasaki Heavy Industries plant in Akashi. Instead of opening the safety barrier, which would have automatically shut the robot down, he took a shortcut and jumped over it, bypassing the system entirely. While working, he accidentally activated the robot, which pinned him against a nearby machine and fatally crushed him. Urada thus became the first Japanese person, and one of the very first in the world, to be killed by a robot. The case made headlines both in Japan and abroad, not just for its tragedy, but for how eerily futuristic it sounded. Was this the long-feared beginning of a robot uprising? Well, not quite, but it was one of the earliest robot-related fatalities on record, and perhaps the strangest death in Japan of 1981. On July 9th, arcades around Japan got their first taste of a game that would shape not only Nintendo's future, but with it the history of video games itself. Donkey Kong. Designed by a then 28-year-old Shigeru Miyamoto, the game introduced the world to 2 brand new characters: a stubborn gorilla named Donkey Kong and a heroic little guy called Jumpman, who a few years down the line would of course evolve into none other than Super Mario. Donkey Kong's gameplay was simple but revolutionary. Jumpman had to climb ladders, dodge barrels, and rescue his girlfriend from the giant ape waiting up top. Unlike many arcades hit of the time, Donkey Kong also had a story. An incredibly basic one, sure, but it had one. and it also had characters, a unique charm, and a personality that set it apart. The game was originally developed as a way to reuse unsold arcade cabinets of Nintendo's previous game, Radar Scope, which flopped overseas. And that plan, well, it worked out rather well for Nintendo. During the 12 months following its initial release in Japan, Donkey Kong had made Nintendo a cool $180 million and had exploded into a worldwide arcade phenomenon. It's not an exaggeration to say that Donkey Kong might have saved Nintendo from financial ruin, and in that sense, it might just be one of the most important video games ever made, laying the foundation for a gaming empire that could instead have been nothing more than a struggling toy company in Kyoto. Just 2 weeks later, Japan's criminal underworld was shaken with the passing of a man who had shaped it for decades. Tsuruga Kazuo, the third-generation boss of the infamous Yamaguchi-gumi, Japan's largest Yakuza crime syndicate ever. On July 23, 1981, Tsuruga died of a heart attack at the age of 68. His funeral in Kobe was one of the largest ever held for a crime boss in Japan, drawing in a massive crowd of mourners including an estimated 1,300 gangsters from 200 different gangs, but also influential businessmen, musicians, and actors, including the gang boss's personal friend and legendary actor Takakura Ken, who even portrayed Tsuruga Kazuo in a film trilogy about his life. Taking over as the boss of the Yamaguchi-gumi in 1946, Tsuruga spent the following 35 years of his life transforming the group from a local gang on the brink of defeat into a nationwide crime powerhouse with tens of thousands of members and enough revenue to rival large corporations. With Tsuruga gone, succession struggles loomed. In a highly unusual move, leadership of the Yamaguchi-gumi was briefly passed on to Tsuruga Kazuo's widow, Fumiko. For a short period, she served as the acting boss in what is, to this day, the only case of a woman holding such power in the Japanese world of organized crime. A series of violent Yakuza disputes took place throughout the 1980s as a result of Tsuruga's passing as well. Basically, his death closed one era and opened a new, way bloodier chapter in Yakuza history.
コマーシャルタイムです。
夢だ。
希望だ。みなかみだ。新幹線でひとっ飛び。
上毛高原駅で降りてね。
高速道路でひとっ飛び。
ドライブを楽しんでね。
近い。楽しい。みなかみ。
みなかみ温泉はあなたの味方よ。
奥利根みなかみ。
On August 24th, 1981, Honda launched its second-generation Accord in Japan. A great car? Sure, but what makes this thing iconic, you ask? Well, how about the world's first in-car navigation system? No, seriously, the 1981 Honda Accord offered this thing as an option. The Electro Gyrocator, a 9-kilogram behemoth that used a gyroscope and a servo linked to the transmission to tell drivers where they were while on the move. To operate this thing, all you had to do was slot a translucent map into the system's gorgeous 6-inch monochrome CRT screen, and mark your own personal indicators with a handy pen if needed. Price? Around 300,000 yen, nearly a quarter of the car's cost. Totally worth it. Janky? Absolutely. But also undeniably cool and way ahead of its time. September 1st, a true milestone in the rise of Japan's convenience store culture. The official incorporation of Family Mart, one of the country's leading chains of Konbini, as the Japanese like to call it. The chain had already existed as a Seiyu Group offshoot for a couple of years at that point, and future competitors like 7-Eleven and Lawson had both been in the business since the mid-1970s as well. However, 1981 was when Family Mart truly set out on its own, and over the next couple of decades, Family Mart's stores spread like wildfire across Japan, offering 24/7 convenience for everything from snacks to last-minute bills. One of its secret weapons is certainly its legendary Famichiki fried chicken, launched in 2006 and claimed by many to be the best konbini chicken that money can buy. Today, with over 17,000 stores nationwide, Family Mart is second only to 7-Eleven and remains a staple of Japanese everyday life. Also in September, an early 80s cybercrime that sounds almost too wild to be true. All the way back on March 25th of that year, at a Sanwa Bank branch in Ibaraki, Osaka Prefecture, 32-year-old Ito Motoko, a female employee, used a computer terminal to transfer 180 million yen to fictitious accounts at 4 other branches. After completing the transfers, she faked a toothache, left work around 10:30 a.m., and began withdrawing the money from the nearby branches in installments. She then hopped on a plane to Tokyo to hit the remaining 2 branches before handing the entire haul over to a married Tokyo businessman she was having an affair with. He kept most of it for himself, but gave 5 million yen back to her. She then fled abroad, traveling to Taipei, Hong Kong, and finally Manila, where she presumably expected to meet her lover. But he never showed. He used the rest of the money to enjoy a lavish holiday in Japan, together with his wife and family. Girl got played like a fiddle. The public didn't hear about this incredible scheme until September 5th, when newspapers finally broke the story. Ito Motoko was then placed on an international most wanted list, arrested in Manila on September the 8th, deported back to Japan, and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Her lover? He got 5 years. When asked why she did it, Ito Motoko simply said, "I did it for the person I love." Aww. On October 10th, 1981, the Japanese Ministry of Education released the Choyo Kanji Hyo, a standardized list of 1,945 Chinese characters deemed essential for literacy. It replaced the Toyo Kanji list from 1946, adding 95 new characters and simplifying 1. The list wouldn't be revised again until 2010, when it was expanded to 2,136 characters. A collection that continues to haunt every aspiring Japanese learner to this day. Gatekeeping at its finest.
ラブダちゃん、うちの贈り物、太陽系を吹き飛ばすファッショナブルギャグの電撃ショック。しっかり受け止めてほしいじゃん。
The final tragedy of the year struck in mid-October, when on the 16th, a gas explosion ripped through a Hokutan company-owned coal mine in Yubari, Hokkaido. A pocket of methane gas had ignited deep underground, triggering Japan's deadliest mine disaster in decades, with 93 miners losing their lives and over 100 more sustaining injuries. Mining accidents had plagued Hokkaido for much of the 20th century, but by the 1980s, they were becoming less common thanks to better safety standards and the gradual decline of coal mining itself. That made the Hokutan explosion a shocking reminder of the risks still faced by workers in the industry, and within a few years, coal mining in Japan would shrink drastically and many surviving mines would close. Today, the Hokutan disaster is still remembered as one of the biggest mining accidents of its kind in post-war Japan. But to close out 1981 on a more positive note, though perhaps not if you're a Liverpool fan, Tokyo's National Stadium played host to the Intercontinental Cup for the second time that year on December 13th, a football match played between the champions of Europe and South America's Copa Libertadores winners. Japanese automaker Toyota had revived the competition as a sponsor earlier that year after noticing its decline, and rebranded it the Toyota Cup, giving Tokyo a front-row seat to world-class football. In the December 13th, 1981 edition, Liverpool from England went up against Flamengo from Brazil, a team led by the legendary Zico, a man who would go on to have a close relationship with Japan later on during his career. A 62,000-strong crowd watched Liverpool get torn to shreds 3-0 that day, a spectacle that surely helped spark a fascination with the sport in Japan years before professional football really took off with the J-League in the 1990s. For one afternoon in December of 1981, Brazilian magic ruled Tokyo. Liverpool got schooled, and the Intercontinental Cup cemented its place as a must-watch annual event in Japan. At least until it finally disappeared in 2004. It was fun while it lasted though.
星泉
愚かな女になりそうです。丸。
And that, my friends, was 1981. And we still got 8 more years to go. What was your favorite moment of 81 though? Did I miss anything? Comment section is all yours. But before we end this one, let's just take a moment to look at this beautiful list of Patreon supporters, including the Hockey Channelman, Xo Wiabu, Javier Soravia, Steve Matsui, Turam, RK0, Sierra DC, White Gilden, Justin Down, Yoko the Space Whale, Cats and Soup, Chart B-Man, Ben Harradine, Metal Mama, T-Bird, Tom Ericus Prime, and Boo Boo Cakes. And with that, I hope to see you all again next year. Until then, じゃあまたね。